So we have beautiful Lindisfarne, and this one is kind of a dusky time, which is really, really interesting actually. And I think it's showing up slightly darker on my camera perhaps as well, than even with my lights on, than it perhaps is in daylight. So I mean, you can adjust your colours to whatever you want to. I'm still within this, it'll be quite interesting to demonstrate once we get onto the castle area. Still try and demonstrate getting some 3D effect even with the dark, because sometimes that's quite, knowing how to do it when it is really dark, what kind of colours and things we can use. But by all means, there's beautiful boats and the sea, the sea view of Lindisfarne. There's all sorts of really nice ones. So just go with whichever one you fancy. I mean, really, it's just kind of mapping out, whichever site that you see, just mapping out and kind of deconstructing it. So what I can do, if I wanted to, I'll show you a pen. It's just draw like a little grid. You don't have to, because sometimes it's easy to work across and plot it out that way. So what I can do is just, look at the fact that this is about just over halfway. Now, if you're using pencil, just remember a light touch. This is only because so that you can see it on my camera. I mean, I could draw on the grid if you wanted, but I mean, sometimes it helps. I mean, this one it did for me this morning, because I realized, it makes you realize that most of the castle is over this side, so it was quite helpful kind of drawing that out this morning, because it was mainly over there, and you think, oh, okay, that makes it easy. So that was with that one. If I drew a line down the middle of there, you can back on most of the castle and the hill is over that side. But as I said, you don't have to do that. It's only if it helps you. If it's a hindrance, don't bother. But pretty much with most of the time, we can kind of get these sections out. I suppose the biggest thing to think about is how you get this, something like a fence, how you manage to get that to appear to go smaller and get the sense of perspective on it, really. Like that. So that's helpful, having a little quarter like that. Because what I'm going to do, sorry, before I start chatting too much about that, I'll just pop this on so it translates to here. That's my middle. If we were to do it this way, then what I have got a good grasp of here is, whereabouts this coastline comes here. So I know that when I'm looking in here, I've got a little bit of the edge of the castle here in this quarter. And I can put this bit in a moment, but I'm just going to bring this castle edge up. It does help a little bit, doesn't it, with that actually? And then, looking at the kind of angle on the castle as it goes over. And again, we can adjust all this. I mean, I was showing a different way, because actually you don't even have to map this out. You can just kind of pop it in if you want to. With this one, I didn't draw this in at all, because I wanted to get the sky in behind, and it was so finicky around everything. And then I just popped that in over the top of the sky with my brush. I mean, we can do the same with this as well. I'll show you that as well when we come to doing that. So it just gives us a bit more of an idea. That there's this, this castle comes out, and then there's the castle walls coming around the outside here. It's just a slightly different view, obviously, as well. And then in terms of, I mean, this is all very straightforward. What we can see, though, interestingly, is how this path comes and crosses over here. So it goes right across the other side, look like that. So we know there's this path coming up. I mean, you don't even have to put that in. If you want to, you can. But we know that that's kind of right in the distance. We don't want too much detail in that, because we want it to kind of disappear. But this is the bit, isn't it? It's like, oh no, where do I start? So actually, a really good place to start is the top of your fence, and just work out. It takes up quite a proportion of this paper. So I'd say it's just under 2/3 of the way down the bottom of the fence post and then the top. So this is quite helpful here. So if we get the nearest to us, just make that a bit brighter so you can see it. There we go. If we're just using this as a guide at the end. It's kind of more than a third there, and that one comes across here. And then we can find the furthest bit of the fence in this quarter here, whereabouts this comes to on this middle line. It's getting smaller. We can see that. And then we can just kind of follow it. Now, again, you don't even have to put that fence on. What I'm going to do is just to get the line, because it helps with the top. It helps a little bit with this fence, with the top of where the sea comes in. So that's all I'm drawing it for. I'm not really going to draw in the features until after. I just want to kind of get an idea of, so it's coming up. Just an idea of where this bit of beach comes in behind it. And then we've got this little area here, which we can just have an idea of it coming around. But as I said, don't do too much detail in it at this point. And then another bit comes round. And then we can see it disappearing over the top here, can't we? So it's right at the top there. And it kind of weaves around there. We can't really see it much because it's disappearing. But then we can see it coming back out here. But the reason, yeah, as I said, the reason I'm kind of looking at this is that so we can see where this bay is. There's obviously the edge of a bit of a cliff there coming down, but then you can see the bay, can't you, coming out? So I'm really more interested in how this bay is coming out into this kind of section, how the sea, this horizon, I'm going to use a little ruler to get that very nice. Comes out over the top. So it's so that fence post in itself is useful just so that we can see that. But I'm going to make sure I've got all the colours behind it before I draw this over the top. So there's not an awful lot of extra things going on really there. There's just lots of different tones and colours, which gives us a lot of interest. And I might just pop kind of how the castle comes down here like that. But again, we can't really see a huge amount of detail in there, and I'm not going to do that until I've got my sky on, because I might bring the sky down a bit. Just kind of just getting a few bits in place. So again, there's some of this wall coming round, a little bit in here. A bit of the wall comes in, but then we can't see it again. So it's just very interesting. And then we've got a bit of this flatter area. So all it's helping us doing on here is looking at some slightly different tones. Where is the rock? How's that a different colour? Again, we can put those on over the top. Kind of gives us the shape as well. So I'll come back to that in a little bit, really. But I'm going to get rid of this mark on here now, if I can find my rubber. Or I may just paint over it, actually. I'm just going with me now. That out of the way now. It's not a hindrance. Plenty of really interesting colours to work with on here, for sure. So, with the sky, a while since we've done the sky actually with the acrylics, one of the beautiful things is we can have, there's all sorts of lovely, lovely colours we can use. You know, you can go as light as you want or as dark as you want. I'm going to try and get a bit of the moodiness in there. But again, it's just we're interpreting it in the way we want to. One of the biggest things is working what overlaps, what, you know, which comes first, what overlaps and what's in the background. And really, I'm kind of ignoring all this cloud at the front really at the moment. And even though we've got a bit of cloud cover at the back, it almost becomes part of the sky. So I'm not worrying about this too much. But these that definitely overlap, I will put those on afterwards. What I want to have ready are a few tones like a darker blue, a lighter blue, and then a couple of these peachy yellowy colours as well in the bottom, because it all, as I said, it almost blends so it becomes part of it. And I'm really having them mixed up ready to go before, because I don't know if you remember, but if you want to blend your sky a little bit more so there's less lines or linear feeling to it, then we need to work quickly whilst it's all wet. So that we can actually blend into it, keep blending into like the next layer. So just having it mixed up. So really, this is very much getting back into what kind of a colours you might try. So I have got here a phthalo blue. You might have a Prussian blue. That's another colour you can use. It gives that kind of very deep, more of a depth colour to your blue. A cerulean blue, that's a bit lighter than cerulean, it's more of a turquoise, but cerulean, when you mix it with white, will go a bit more like that. Or ultramarine blue, which gives you a very sky blue effect, almost very similar to this one. Maybe a bit, might even have a bit of cerulean in it. And of course, we can mix across. So just, you know, remind yourself it's fine to mix a couple of blues if you want one, you know, one that's a bit more kind of Mediterranean sky, or you want a really kind of like ultramarine sky, which is, you know, very, very kind of, I always call it baby blue, really. That's how I would say. And then plenty of white, because that's our kind of, when we're mixing skies that are not very dark, we will end up putting quite a bit in. And then thinking about you know, what kind of sunsets in, and this goes the same as the other one. So on the others, there may be like quite often skies do have two colours to them, you know, like it might be thicker and darker at the top and lighter as we go towards the horizon. So you can just use one blue and keep adding white to it as, you know, and as we get nearer to the horizon. I'm going to go for a peachy colour. Now you can do that two ways. You can use an orangey colour. So I'm going to put that on there as well, just in case it's time. Or you can use kind of a yellow and a red. And then add white, a bit white to it as well. You can think about the yellows that you've got. If you've only got, so I've got a warm orange, a warm yellow and a warm red, both Cadian colours. You can use a lemon yellow and see what effect that gives you. If you mix it with white, it might be a little bit more how you prefer it. What have we got there? You can use a really light yellow, like Naples yellow. Doesn't really matter. I think the thing is, use what you've got, and if you've got more than one colour, just try it out. Because sometimes you think, oh, you know, I know I like this colour, but then you try another one, you think, yeah, I really like that one as well. So it's always worth, and actually, even if you've been using a specific colour scheme for quite a number of years, sometimes we change what we like as we go along. So it's always worth still trying things out as you go, even if you're used to using one, because you can just surprise yourself because our preferences change. Right. So I will come back in and I will add a bit more depth to some of these colours, but I'm going to go for like a blue colour, kind of a like nice blue behind. I'm going to test them out for sure. I might just actually get another palette to mix on. I think this is tiny, tiny. Well, I'm just using a little, just using my little knife for this. So I'm looking at, so sometimes what happens when we add white is it makes it much more pastel-y and can take out like the depth of colour. So you see what's happening there. That one is phthalo blue and it's gone very turquoise in. Actually, I want to put that back in. I want some of this real depth back in. So I'm just going to mix it at the sides. Got a tiny bit on my actual palette knife here. So I'm just going to just see how that responds. Okay, I'm a bit more happy with that now. So clearly I wanted it a bit darker than I thought I did. We don't always know until we get going with it. And then I think as I come down, I may even, that's the only thing, is make sure you get it off your brush well. So if you're wanting to switch over, I'm going to make this lighter again for this bit in the middle here that we've got. But you don't have to stick with the same thing. You can use ultramarine in the middle, for example, and a different blue at the top. As long as we've got all those colours ready and there's plenty mixed up, that's absolutely fine. And you could even use three. You could put three in there, put a really light one in as you come down. Make that a bit lighter still. Just press that. Yeah, let's try that one, this one. Okay, so I'm not quite getting that sky blue. So I'm going to go in with a little bit of, let's see, a bit of ultramarine. I'm going to need more than that though. Okay, that's lightening up, but it's still a little bit too cold for me. Which is where you can actually just mix and match a little bit, see if it gives you a good combination there, the two together. Always worth it. Oh, there we go. I'm happier now with that. There we are. So yeah, so it's just this process, isn't it? Testing through to see if we are happy with what we have. So we'll test that one again now. Yep, it's getting better. Okay. And then I am also going to try it and mix up the little bit at the bottom. I've got to be a bit careful though with the blues in here. I may even just leave a little bit of the gap down here because if I mix up the yellow and the blue, we'll end up with a green in the sky. Especially if it's wet and we are blending it a lot, we'd have to be a bit more careful. So I think I'm just going to leave that one. I may just make it lighter. Wait till it's dried a little bit and pop it on. But I mean, if you're careful with this, it'll be fine. So all I'm going to do now is go in with these colours. Make sure I've got enough water on my brush. And again, it's just a nice consistency, like enough paint on that it gives you, well, that covers well. But it's interesting because I was asked this question today, actually, and it is, it's a really valid question. It's like, is it okay if the paper shows through? And the answer to it is, it's absolutely fine as long as you like it. So if you find that if they've seen the texture come through the paper and you don't like it, then just put the paint on more thickly. Some people just don't like it and some people do. Or you can apply the paint thinly. It really doesn't matter. I always say it can be a bit harder to so it feels an easier process if you do if you do have plenty of paint on, because it does glide much more easily. But no, you don't have to, it doesn't have to have lots of coverage on there, as long as you don't mind the feel. So working quickly, quite important here. Especially as well, it depends on what your temperature's like at the moment in your house. Because if it's warm, then it will dry much faster. So I'm going to keep it moving. And then I'm going to kind of get in some of these other layers. So I'm going in with this dark colour. And it's just like, working that texture. And I'm using a nice flat brush because that's what I like. And I like that feeling of getting those lines in there. Now, some people don't. So again, this is what we're working with, complete reference over anything else. What do we prefer? So if you see at the minute, this is going to look a bit patchy. So all I'm going to do, I'm just going to go back in, take off the excess off my brush, and I'm just going to start to move this backwards and forwards and just kind of get it to blend in a little bit more. Because it's nice and thick, you can work it in. And again, if you put something on and you think, oh, I'm not sure about that now, then just work another colour over the top of it. Dark, light. It's all in the same tone, same palette. So that's where it's good. Once obviously we're starting to mix in slightly different colours, and yeah, that's a different thing altogether. But at the moment, we're all blues on this one. And you can always get another brush as well. So I'm just going to get another brush here and just kind of work it in a little bit as well. A little bit more paint in there. So I've got a little round brush. I think because I'm in such a tiny bit of paper as well, I'm just going in with a slightly smaller brush here because mine's quite big. What I've done here is I've gone in with a really thin area of water. It's going to go over the top there. And that kind of just gives a bit of cloud cover as well. And then I'm going to go in with a really nice kind of pop of bright in there as well over the top. So it feels quite bright. Really sky blue in there. So, don't be frightened of going in with any lighter areas in any of these areas that you think, oh yeah, that does feel much lighter. I mean, even in here, there's some that are kind of a bit lighter as well, which you can work in. If anybody's got their mop brush from last time as well, that's always another way of blending behind with the edge. Just putting a bit of cloud over the top and kind of moving it around. Right. No. So I'm just going to go in this top area with some blue. I'm doing exactly what I said, that you can, if you've got some light, you've seen some lighter areas in amongst it, then just pop them in. And do you remember last time we got our blendy finger in? We used our finger to blend it. Again, if that's something you want to do to soften down some of the clouds and things, you just want a little bit in there, in the background or whatever. Just use your finger and just give it like curl it, I actually really quite enjoyed that last time. I thought, well, I'm really definitely be bringing that into my work, I think, in the future, because Very nice. Yeah, so I'm just kind of building this up, aren't we? So what we're going to look at now is some of the other colours that are in there. Just give this brush a nice clean. And a lot of it, I think with this particular one is we're going to have need that faith as well today, because it never looks, does it, when it's half finished. It's quite irritating to have faith. I just got to go, just work with it, because when we get the castle on, everything will change. Each bit will feel a bit different. So I'm going to look in this bottom section now. So I've got these other colours to mix on here. Let's have a look. Yeah, it does feel a bit pink. So I'm going to go in with this Naples yellow today. But that's kind of the Naples yellow is like the equivalent of putting a bit of white in with, you know, a chromey yellow, like, or a warm yellow, like a Cajun yellow. So it's just really trying it out. So that's not pinky enough for me. So I'm just going to add a bit of red in there. And that's all we're doing, is we're working through thinking, what do I need in there? And then I'm adding white. It's really light on the painting. I'm just trying to work out this bit at the bottom here. And again, if you added like a yellow and you thought, oh, I love that, then absolutely, just use that. You don't have to be tied to anything. Even as we go in, we might just change our minds. I think it's the freedom, and knowing you've got the freedom to change things at any point is the bit that changes the way we see art, because we know that we can just, it's not spoiled, it's just, you know, or if we're not happy with it at that point, we can always just change it again. I'm going to go in with a smaller brush again, just make sure I've got, because I've used blue on this brush, just make sure I take that out. And I'm just going to take this at the bottom. I'm not worrying too much about overlapping, because actually it's quite light cloud over the top, so I'm just going to pop that over and try and keep, it doesn't matter if I go over this line, because I can always change it underneath there with the C. I'm not even worrying about if it's not perfectly straight. So whatever's on your sky, I'll show you some, you know, reminders of how we do the clouds and things and wispy clouds. So this side down here is a little bit different. It's still quite blue. So I think I might have to just get some more of those, some of those blues down the bottom first before I go in here, although maybe minimal amounts of it. But maybe it's really a really light tint of blue. There's some in this mix here, so I'll just mix that in. There we go. Just a few little lines of it, really. And then again, you know, just thinking out what colour can we see? It's, to me, it's a really lightened version of what I've just done here. So I'm going to go light to that. Can't actually see too much colour in it. Oh, how wonderful is it? I know this is a bit random, sorry. I'm sat in my studio and it's like, how wonderful is it to hear the evening bird song? Oh, amazing. Think, oh, definitely on its way. It's the spring. So that's quite a bit lighter than over this side. But what I can do is, if I want to add any other lighter areas, I'll just go over like that. I might just put some of these in between the area that I've just done over here, because it is quite light. And then, so I don't end up with a real strong patch, I'm just softening the edge down with my finger. But you could use your mop brush to soften the edges down there over the top and just mist it over. This is why it doesn't, you know, we can get it to work to our advantage. And you see, I'm going right in there now with this finger. Just to soften that edge. Okay. So thinking about, what do we do? Where do we go from there? Well, I'm more than happy at the moment with that bottom section, so I'm not going to really do anything else to that. So it's just thinking about what I'm going to do with the top. Am I going to darken anywhere areas? Well, the only maybe other darker area I might put in, obviously you could put more blue of the dark blue that you've used, or if you've got Payne's grey, which is kind of like a very dark blue, almost grey. So look at the colour. So that's going to take it really dark. I'm not really sure. It might make it too dark, so I might take a little bit of the blue that I've already used and mix it with that. The other thing you could try, if you did want a dark colour over the top, is try a purple with it instead if you've not got Payne's grey. See what that gives you. Okay, so that is giving me quite a deep colour, but I'm still going to go in with more of the phthalo blue here. So all we're doing, isn't it, is we're just trying things out, which is marvellous. So, we had the mop brushes last time, so that's something that you could do if you want to. Just put a very small amount of water on it. Make sure it's not soaking and dry it off a little bit on a bit of tissue. So you can start to, pop some of that colour on. We've just mixed and kind of like soften it down over the top if you want to. If you don't want to do that, you can go in, just do what we've done with your finger actually, just kind of pop it over the top. If you wanted to build up the area of depth just over in this corner is what I meant really. So so we're looking at kind of where it comes in. So I'm just kind of dabbing it on at the moment. And again, it's looking at where are the layers. Well, this kind of seems to come over the top, doesn't it? And this is the only issue because it's a bit too damp, so you can see what's happening here. It's just getting my fingerprints in it, so I'm going to have to let that dry a little bit and put some less water on my brush and more paint. When the paint is more thick, you can move it around a little bit easier. And put a little bit up here in this corner. Again, so that you can either use your finger or your mop brush. The reason if it was a bigger picture, I'd use my mop, but because it's so tiny, it's difficult to get that. So I'm just kind of just working into these areas that feel really cloudy, building them up. Just really kind of over this top area, isn't it? But again, if you look on your picture, you can do this with any of the colours. If you're wanting to get something that's kind of, you don't want it to be really obvious, just wanting to kind of build a little bit of colour up over it. You can still kind of get a sense of the colour underneath. Yeah. There we go. So you can see how we're kind of building that up without, it being too intense. And then, looking at the other colours that are underneath it. It gives us the atmosphere without it being really heavy, even though it's dark, But for some people that, some of these dark skies are just too dark, and that's fine. If you were doing that and you thought, oh no, I'm really just not enjoying that, then that's absolutely fine. Don't do it, It is fine. So I'm just looking at some of these pops of colour there. They look a bit orangey yellow to me, in amongst some of the other colours. That's really intense. So again, just decide how much, when you're doing these little pops of colour, how much you want to put in. A bit of white in there. Now you see what's happened there, because I've added white tint there. It's taken out all the colour out of those brights, and that's not what I really want to happen. So again, you know, just be mindful of how much white you add in sometimes if you wanted to keep the strength of the colour. So I'm looking at what colour this could be. There's some kind of, it's a bit reddish in there. I've got a tiny bit of white in there. Just be a bit more mindful this time about how much I'm putting in. I'm even going to put a tiny bit of this blue in, so it's almost a little bit purpley background there. Interesting. It's kind of here, and then I'll put some pops of colour in there. Yeah, it's interesting, that colour. Right, so let's pop a few bands of this on. Let's see what happens. So it is, I haven't got those orange, bright orange bits in. That's why it's looking a bit purpley at the minute, but I'm not worrying about it, because I'm going to build up the colour, the brighter colours on the top of it. And again, you know, it's just deciding how much you want to apply, because you might not want to go in with these really dark colours. Okay. And also you get these like different clouds where, you know, they might kind of just be, you know, wisping or pulled down a bit. So you can pull it in all directions as well, with whichever brush or your finger, whatever you're using. So that's the dark one. I'm going to build in these nice brights over the top. So let's find a colour for that. Let's go in the yellow and the orange together. And tiny bit. I'm really sparing with my painting some of that bright colour. And now I'm going to, you know, start to build up some of these other colours in here. They're fascinating, aren't they, the clouds? I mean, it's just, it's just, you know, you could just study them for ages. Really look. So I'm popping these on where I think it's going, and I am going to soften this down in the same way. I'm just being mindful not to really kind of scrub it in, because I don't want the two colours, the purple and the yellow, to mix together. And this is the thing as well, is like knowing it might be it starts lifting off. If it starts lifting off, it just means there's too much paint on. Just got to let it dry a little bit. So we get some nice kind of a few little light pops through there as well. Not too many. So again, we're just only putting those bright ones on where we can see them. And then that again, that makes quite an atmospheric feel in the sky there. What else have we got? What's over here? Lots more pinky. So we'll pop those on. Again. And again, I want a few little nice bright pops to come out there and behind here. Okay, so yes, we're just adjusting and adapting, aren't we, as we go. So that feels quite heavy over here. I may just pop a little bit of a brighter one back in. Especially because I think I've marked that with my hand. I think I've put my hand in it as well. Yeah, it's quite dark up there, actually, to be fair. Yeah, some of these little bits, even here we get some of these quite light clouds coming out from behind, don't we, the hillside, out from the behind the castle. So we'll pop that in there. And then if I want to, we'll just have some as we go. So I'm going to kind of leave that there for the moment and I'll come and chat to everyone because I think the thing is, this is a stage where we all start to say, oh no, I'm not quite happy with my sky, but it's because we haven't got the actual castle in. To almost say, come and hang on now for a minute and we'll come back and get the castle in. But I'm just going to take a pause there, see how everyone's getting on before we move on to the next little bit. Okay, so we want to really start to think about, getting some of this foreground in really, as much because it's very difficult to visualize, how that sky looks without a chunk there. I mean, you can practice it. You can kind of just like imagine it jumping in. That's one way of doing it. If you're struggling with thinking, oh no, just kind of like imagine that jumping in there, just to give you some kind of a visual on it. Um, but yeah, so it's just having a little look at these different colours and things, depending on which castle which view you've got for the castle. I'm kind of going to go in with a fairly basic ready. I think I already know what colour I want to do that. Like a ready ochre colour. I have got this colour which is buff titanium, which is basically unbleached titanium white. But that's probably going to be just for highlights, and that's the same as adding. So if you want to get a stone colour, certainly for this is not as the other one's a bit more ready. If you want to go in with a basic kind of colour or whatever, you can just use titanium white, a touch of burnt umber brown, a dark brown, and a touch of yellow ochre. And now that will give you kind of a buff. We're almost putting the colours back into the bleach, basically the white. So this is like got obviously bits in it that are darker and bits in it that are lighter. So I'm just going to go in and I've just put one block of colour in, and then I'm going to go over with those shadows just because it's quite difficult to see at this point which is which. So I'm to this buff titanium. I'm only going to use that on the highlights. I'll just move that to the side. I'm going to add a bit of this orangey colour. for a test. Feels like it needs a bit of a, but again, you could use whatever colour that you prefer. You can even use like a warmer brown, like a burnt sienna or something if you want to. And then I'm just going to get in this side. I'm going to change again because there's lots of other colours on here as well. So I'm just kind of popping shapes in here at the moment, just so it's not too particular. I'm keeping it quite loose because sometimes if you've got a lot of looseness going on in the background and then you make this really detailed, it can look like two different pictures, if that makes sense. So you can always tighten it up after, but it's a bit harder to do it the other way around, if that makes sense. So we've got two halves, this bit around the back as well. At the moment, it's kind of like some blobs, really. Nothing too structured about it. Now I'm going to just get some a brown, dark brown in there because that's another colour I'm going to use. It just feels, although it's dark, it's quite, it doesn't feel like really, really blue dark, if that makes sense. I'm just going to go in. You can go with a smaller brush if you want. I'm keeping mine the same size. There we go. I'm just going to add in some touches of where I can see those darker shadows coming in. And again, it looks really strange when we've got this very like a lighter palette and then we've got, you know, we're going in with this darker one. So again, we're going to have to persevere and just remember that it will be fine as we come to, you know, getting the other parts of the castle hill and everything on there. I'm going to go create this shadow side and just create a little bit of shape by bringing some of that colour around. And then got this second turret here. That in there. So it's still loose enough, but we're getting an idea of some of the shape in there as well. Okay, so from here, I'm just like looking at putting a little bit more shape in there. So I'm just going to mix a little bit of this lighter colour with the darker one. So I've got some kind of something in the middle here. And all I'm doing is observing where those shadows and things change, and that's it really. And I've got the same size brush. This is quite a large brush really for the detail because I'm not wanting to pull in yet to any detail too much. So I've purposely kept this larger brush. I do that sometimes. And then I'm just looking at the little highlights. I am going back with this buff titanium, but as I said, you can make that with a bit of white, titanium white, and a bit of brown, and a bit of ochre or yellow. So I'm just popping on just a few of those, a couple of little bits that are slightly brighter. in a little bit so it's not too stick out too bright there. That's it really. Darkening this off a bit more. And that's gone quite down the hill that there. So then we're looking at the other bits. I'm now going to kind of look at some of these dark shadows. So you can, where you get really dark mossy kind of colours, you can use dark brown, like this is burnt umber. You can also use green. So there's different types of green. You could try sap green if you've got that. You could try chrome green and brown together. You can try adding a bit of yellow in for mossiness, but I'm going to do that around this side, so I'll show you that. But I'm going to try and keep this pretty dark, to be fair, because it is. Or you can just use, you know, a really dark green with it, like a phthalo green or a hooker's green, any of those colours. I've got a little bit of very small amount of sap green on here. And then we're looking at, you know, how this hill's in a lot of shadow there. So I might even be tempted to use less green over this side and just make it much darker. You could, you know, you could try hooker's green or something with that. There's not much texture up there, and we don't really want too much texture in that bit because otherwise it pulls it forwards. When we're trying to keep some distance in, you know, keep this a little bit in the distance, we want it to fall back a bit there. But I'm just kind of moving this around a little bit, looking at the shape I'm getting in here. So this bit underneath, if you look, it kind of, you get the bit that's flat on the top that comes up in a slightly different green. That's a bit darker. So again, I'm just applying that knowledge, making that one quite dark. And you can even, if you want to make it even darker, if it's not light, if it's too light blue, you can even add like a bit of a dark blue in there as well. That drops the colour down. There we go. All we can do is look. That's the biggest, most important thing, is the looking. Looking, 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 and more looking. And then I'm going in with a slightly green and brown mix. I'm still keeping it green and brown together, but it should give enough of a contrast that we can see those different patches of where we get a slight highlight. So so it feels like one bit is in the shadow and one bit's a bit flatter. If you can't, you can always add a bit more over the top to make it pop. And then it kind of wiggles its way down, doesn't it, that hillside? So, you know, you can pop texture in it as well if you get, as you go in, if you want to. You can even just, you know, pop all of that in if that helps. Coming all the way around like that. Um, and then So just pop in some of these little stony colours in here. Again, instead of a buff titanium, you can add a bit of brown to a white, a really small amount, a bit of yellow. And then build that up over the top once you've got your other colours in. And again, we're kind of just popping in. So if your hand starts moving in a direction you're wanting to kind of dab things on or dab things on, then actually go for it, what I would say. And then any other little bits of rocks and things that you can see, or steps down or whatever it is, but without too much detail again, because we're a little bit in the distance, aren't we? And then I've got that little, which I'll put on over the top, but it's just kind of giving me a sense of place, putting in where that goes. So yeah, so we've got all sorts going on, enough that it's starting to take shape in the sky. That's the thing. We're getting this sense of something's happening, which is important. And then all we can do is build up around there. So I've been looking at the types of green again in here as we're coming down the hill. This section here. Just work your way through it, just enjoying it really. So it just depends on the type of green. If you've only got one green, that's absolutely fine. What you can do is to make it brighter and more yellow, you add a bit more yellow. So like this is quite, up here is more vibrant, isn't it? So I'm going to add more yellow to my green for that section, because that's where the sun is shining on it as well. In sections. Yeah, it should be really helping to ease back in with painting with acrylics. I'm just going to pushing that back up there really, and then I'll just pop a bit of the shadow back in where it comes round. Sometimes we just can't get the shadowing to start with because we don't always notice it. I know we ideally want to pop it in, but it doesn't matter. So I'm just kind of popping in that pinky colour, bit of that light colour. You could do like a make it pinky. It depends what you're seeing, actually, is what I'd say. Just a little pop of a lighter colour again, so it stands out. We build up to lightest anywhere where there's a real highlight. I mean, you can go in with brights as well, like on here on this hill. I'm just going to add some yellow to that over the top. It can look quite effective. Just warms it up. It gives the impression as well that you're getting the sun on it on that little bit. And then really from there, we can kind of do exactly the same. We're looking at this big shadowy area around this fence. So it's quite dark. It's not as dark as the bit up here. Well, it's not, it's more of the lighter colour, isn't it? but then there's a lot of shadow underneath it as well. So I want to mix up that greeny brown colour. But again, you could use, as I said, there's other greens you can use if you have them. Going in quite dark in there, this side of the path. It kind of comes down, doesn't it, this side of the path, and then it swoops round. But yeah, something like a hooker's green or a phthalo green would work quite well as well, you know, as an alternative. We don't have to work in the same green, but if you don't have the other green, that is absolutely fine. Just adapt it. I'm just going to pop this in, darken it in places, particularly along underneath where the fence goes. And then again down here it's really dark, so I'm going to go in with that. It's even darker than up there. This section, I'm going to pop some more green, and I'm actually tempted to put a bit of blue into this section down underneath here. But again, it'll depend on how dark you want to go. You might not want to go really dark. You might want to keep it lighter. So I'm going in with green and brown. Down here, I'm also going in with blue. So I'm going in with ultramarine because that sometimes makes a darker mix in another colour than some of the other blues. So I'll just see, just test it. Yeah, it's getting nice and dark. I'm going to go in with more blue because it's really dark on that corner. And again, like I said, if it might be too much for contrast. You might want to lighten the whole thing up, and that's absolutely fine. As you know, I quite like contrasts with my own painting, so that's why I'm doing that. But I'd like, obviously, you to do exactly what you like. I'm going along this bank, because then there's another. You can dot it on and create, you know, texture on there. Do exactly what you want. It looks really dark on my camera, doesn't it? It's not actually as dark as that. It looks, I'd say the colour that this is in life is like you know, the darker of the army greens. That's the colour it's look, but it looks really dark on this camera because it's wet. So I'm just kind of bringing this out, this really dark area, bringing it out a little bit into here because it seems to come on this bank here. Creates this shape of this bank. It's helpful to kind of put shadows where we can see them. It does create, when we get all the other colours in, it will create that shape. And then other colours that go around. Now I can also put that behind here if I want, although it looks slightly more beachy there. I can't quite see, it must be actually. I'm just going to put a little bit of that colour behind, but then I'm going to get the other edge of the kind of darker beach. Just kind of gives a base to which to put them on. Quite dark on the rocks down there, isn't it? Right, So I can't quite tell what this is here. It looks almost like it could be a bit beachy colour, so I might actually just put a little tiny bit of red in, pinky red in there, which I know that's almost what I can see. On this little picture anyway. And then we've got this kind of other bit sweeping around, which is lighter, which I'm going to bring in. So we do need a contrast between the two, and the reason being, and it doesn't have to be a really strong contrast, but you need some contrast between the two, because one will fall away a little bit in the shadows and one will kind of show the shape that's going on around here. We need some more green. And then we'll take a pause in a moment. Let's just get this green on before we do the last bit, before we work our way around and see what's happening. So some of these aren't quite really bright yet because it's kind of still a little bit in the shadow. So I'm going to go in with a slightly darker. So this is, we're just altering what we can see. Same here. I want to get a sense that this is a bank coming on without it being super bright, because it's not super bright. It's brighter in the middle here, isn't it? And I'm just popping a little bit through here so we get this transition of colours. And then again, we've got this, like this, it kind of opens up and rolls over. It's fascinating once you start to look at all those shapes in the grass down here. Lose yourself for hours in this, actually. Yellow. So I'm just mixing these as I go. It is much brighter over this side, but we've still got some of, again, some down here that's not massively bright yet, so we can bring in a little bit of the other colour with it whilst it starts to get a bit lighter. And then build that brighter colour over the top again. So I'm going to go in here with the yellow, but again, just have a little look what you can see. You can put these directional marks in as well. In here. I'm adding on some of these nice yellows in here. But feel free to add on whatever you fancy. But again, depending on the texture of your grass that you're doing, some of it might be like, it's quite short, isn't it? And it's got that soft feeling. So I'm just popping lots of tiny little dots on it. So it all kind of, so it is a little bit blended. It's not many big, thick tufts that I can see of. But if you've got thick tufts, you can pop some of those on. There we go. Yeah, and then just bring things in or bring them out, or if there's any more shadow you want to pop on. I'm going to leave mine be for a little bit. Sometimes we get so much on, we just need to take a little bit of a step back from it because it is very dark as this one actually. But I think for me, if anything, I want to just pop a little bit, slight bit of colour back in here. But I will need to be able to leave it before long so that I can see properly. There we go. So I'll take a pause and see how you're getting on before I do this little side behind here with the fence and everything. And I hope you're just enjoying the process there. Okay, so we're just thinking about what's kind of the other side of the fence, aren't we, really? So we've got this lovely area of water here and a little bit of a beach we can't really see, was what we were just discussing, because it's so dark, isn't it? But it's so I'm just going to go in with what I think is going to go on this next bit of section here, and then this rocky bit down there. So I'm going to go in with this very dark colour again over here. I'm adding some blue, even darken it off even more, because these rocks in here, I'm just not sure. And I'm just kind of wiggling. That's all we can do, is just kind of wiggle around how it goes into the sea. That's not a bit more kind of where it seems to kind of jut out and everything. I'm just going to pop in what I think's behind this fence. It might, we can always lighten bits up that are coming through it if we want to. You can kind of see some pebbly beach in there or something. So I might pop a little bit of a slightly lighter pinkish colour where I think there's a bit of beach in there. Just continue it round. Also, if you pop a little bit of where you think the lighter areas as well as you're going, it sometimes gives us a bit of, it breaks up so you can see where to put your fence back in as well. Okay. So, I mean, you might want to do a little bit of sea. I'm going to put that in before I put my fence over as well, just for a sense of a bit of distance. And again, it's just thinking about looking at the colours that you might use. We had all sorts of lovely colours this morning, but it is quite muted, isn't it? So I don't really know what colour to make that actually. I'm almost tempted to go a little bit of a slight purpley colour in there. So I think you can make it with the blue and red that you've used, or a tiny bit on the side here. It's still quite muted, but again, it just depends. Just if you want to change the colour, you change the colour. If you think, oh, it's too kind of toned down, I'm going to use a bit of this, almost like a bit of this purple, but with a bit of this Payne's grey. It's not too bright. Might need to add a bit more. It kind of knocks the colour down a little bit because I don't want it. I don't want it really bright, vivid purple. Although you might want one if you really like colour, you could go in with that. There we go. And then on top of that, so that's going to be quite dark, isn't it? Might just put the tiniest touch of white in there to flatten down that colour. So it is a bit more muted. And a bit more white. And then I'm going to pop these bits on first. I'm just kind of using a sideways pull like that. I've got my tape on here, so it looks a bit odd because I've gone over the edge here. But then, you know, just trying to get some of the shape as though it's seen. It's not just coming one way. It's kind of, we get all this around the rocks. Like that. And then going in with a lighter colour. So again, it just depends on what you want, whether you want to go in with a very light white or whether you want to go in with a tint. And how much contrast you want in there. And bring a much brighter one. You know, you can go in at this point with a thinner brush, or you can keep it nice and loose and use a bigger one. Experiment with different brush strokes on there. Mm. You know, and then you can have a look at your water in isolation, think, do I want to brighten it up? Do I want to tone it down? Just, you know, I want to put brush strokes in it. You can just work that colour in. Yeah, you might want to pop a few bits of definition back in the water or whatever. You might not. So when you feel like you're happy with it, you don't need, and we don't need to do masses to it either. I am going to just pop some of the shape back in here around it. And then that last little bit is following the fence and deciding on a colour as well for that. So, you know, whether you go down to a thinner brush is up to you. So I'm just going to look at colour. I'm just going to go in for quite a muted, because it is quite muted, isn't it, that? Let's have a look. I'll use some of this white because I've got plenty left. The key to doing things like these, to get it to move, is not to do it too thickly. Just have it on the tip of your brush. We tend to, when we're using white and things anyway, it does give it quite a good coverage. So I'm going to go white, bit of red, a bit of orange. We could use a bit of yellow, a bit brown. Just want to play around with some of those colours. Use yellow ochre. You could use a bit of burnt sienna. And then, you know, the less detail at the back, the better. Not really, we can see that we can see it comes around, can't we? I can always, if it's too bright, like mine's quite bright at the minute, I'll just work over the top of it. And then we've got like where it starts. We marked that out. I'm just getting these, you know, the long ones in, horizontal ones first. And again, don't worry too much about how evenly spread they are, etc. Because fences are supposed to be wonky. They're not supposed, you know, they're not like a straight line, are they? Certainly these ones, they're really kind of beautifully uneven, beautifully uneven, like in nature. Oh, and then you can just pop a few of the down ones in. We're just looking at kind of direction that the posts are in, because that shows us, kind of helps us put in whether it's leaning backwards or forwards. Some might be a bit backward, leaning a bit backwards. Some may lean a bit forwards, and then they start getting closer together, don't they? But again, it's just all giving us a sense of what's happening. And mine's really bright there, because I've used quite a light colour. So what I might do is, the only other thing I think I'll do is just go in with a slightly darker colour. Over the top. So if you're wanting kind of just decide whether you want a peachy colour or whether you want a brownish colour or whatever it is. But you know, there's not many key points that are really bright. There's some that are bright. I mean, the posts that are leaning backwards tend to be darker, don't they? Because they're less in the shadow. So you can go in with a brown or whatever colour. Mine is too bright up here. Definitely. So I want to go in almost with a similar greeny colour to what I've used in here. Just suggest that it's over the top a little bit. And you can also put some green back between it. So if there's any that need a bit of a tweak, you just put the green behind, or between. Right there, it's got a bit out of hand here. So I will just pop a little bit of that colour, that shadow back in. You know, and if there's any kind of that are darker or need to be a bit more green or whatever, you can just go in and do that. And likewise, anything that really does catch the light. There's a few, isn't there, that are a bit bright, slightly brighter than the others. For some reason here on the bottom, I don't know. This corner, probably getting a bit of that sunlight there. But there's not many. And then you can just have a little look, you know, whilst you're there. Is there anything else I want to move, shift, change? You know, you can go back and look at your sky and decide, are you happy with your sky? Do you want to do anything there? I think I will probably just soften this edge down on my cloud because it's quite kind of rigid on its own there. So I want to just put a light wash in. So all I've got here is a watered down of a similar colour over the top, just to give it a slight wateriness and bringing in a bit of that blue back in. And that's it really, that's the only thing I'm going to do on that. And that's what I was saying, sometimes you just need to see everything in action before you make it, or it might be something you want to leave some brights in, you know, some more brights into your sky or onto your rocks or whatever, could do that. Just where you get the occasional one that's just catching the light a little bit, just popping in the shapes that you can see. Just nice and sparingly, really. Or lightening up an area of your path or whatever. And that's it, really. It's just the other thing you can do as well is if you've got to the point where you, because it's the first one, if you're looking, you know, if you want to leave it, come back to it, that is absolutely fine. Sometimes if just to pop it on a shelf, definitely you need some distance from it as well. Step back from your work and have a little look, pop it on the mantelpiece or on a bookshelf shelf or something somewhere, because you know you'll get such a different feel with the texture and everything. But then you can go back in and you can think, you know, are there any more areas of shadow I want to put in, etc. You know, I'm looking here, the top of there, I probably would put a little bit more shadow just at the base here. I'm just looking at balancing it across. Okay. Maybe a little bit of green in it, but yeah, I mean, I'm not going to do too much at all, because I think what we can do is too much to it, and then it's knowing kind of go to just to stop and think, right, I'll have another look at that tomorrow. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. It's a really enjoyable topic, really super. Everyone's sure going to have a really enjoyable time doing it. Thank you. That's my final pause.